After the Colorado Buffaloes 48-21 thumping of the UCF Knights, dare I say that there's more on the table than maybe some of us thought before the season? I'm talking potential Big 12 championship. Dare I say, if they can go on a run, maybe a spot in the college football playoff? I got to say it. Where are they at? I'm hearing crickets from the haters. Chase, what's up, buddy?
Well, you said some of us. I think some of us were talking about that this team has a pretty high ceiling when we were talking in the offseason. But a lot of people in the national media, quick to write us off. And now they have to talk about the Buffs this week. You can just tell the disappointment in their faces that they have to talk about the Buffs. They have to talk about their prospects of win the Big 12 championship. They have to talk about their prospects of making it to the college football playoff. And the haters don't like doing that.
Haters going to hate, man. Haters going to hate. And this is the Sko Show right here on Mile High Sports. Hope everybody is doing well out there on this bye week. See you with an opportunity to catch their breath after their thumping of UCF 48-21. I'm Aniello Piro. You can follow me on social media at Mile High Sports. He is at Chase Howell. __ on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days. Make sure to subscribe to the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. That way you guys never miss an episode of the Sko Show, all of our Nuggets content, Broncos content as well. But we know you, the listener, the viewer, are here to talk some CU Buffs. So drop some comments. Let us know what you think. Where is the ceiling for this CU team? Can they beat Kansas State? We'll break it all down on the Sko Show today. We've got our guy Adam Munsterteiger coming up here in just a moment as well. But Chase, real quick, let's talk about this game, man. Dominant defense. Offense got off to a slow start with the interception from Shedeur, but then rallied and moved forward from there. Number of receivers getting involved. That was the best win of the Coach Prime era without a doubt on Saturday against UCF.
Without a doubt, it was the most complete game. They were obviously able to run the football, which we have talked about a ton. The defense was almost perfect, I want to say, just because of the ability in the secondary and the ability to stop the run. These linebackers, this defensive line, is a completely different team than what we saw last year. This is a tough defense. This is a defense that hasn't given up more than 7 points in the second half. They have not given up double digits in the second half yet this season. They get better as the game goes on, and just all around, this football team is as complete as we've seen it. This is the most complete CU Buffs football team that we've seen since 2016 when they went to the conference championship game.
Well, and I think the big thing for me is how different they've looked since that loss to Nebraska, right? Because you were expected to win that game against North Dakota State, and it was a bit ugly, but you got the job done. And then it's like you get absolutely boat raced in Lincoln against Nebraska. And to me, that kind of was a barometer of like, oh man, like maybe they're not going to be much better than they were last year because, you know, they were able to beat Nebraska at home. But ever since then, man, take care of CSU. Thrilling win over Baylor, which was fun. But what we saw against UCF was dominance. And that's the first time that I saw Colorado both on offense and defense play a clean game and flex on a program that entering the season was supposed to be one of the best teams in the Big 12.
Coach Prime has said it since he got here. He said it at Jackson State. We don't want to just win. We want to dominate. And that was the first time they were able to pull that off. And that's why you have to feel good about this football team and their chances against Kansas State and their chances the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, I am very excited for it. And there's a lot to be excited about. To your point, Kansas State, I like where the bye is at for them as well, because now this Kansas State game, you brought it up to me before the show, you know, the nature of college football season, it seems like every game is just the biggest game, right? Like I remember doing the show with you again about the showdown, and they had to bounce back from Nebraska. And then it was like, okay, well, CSU's not very good. How do they respond in their Big 12 opener against Baylor? Thrilling win, but now it's like, hey, UCF, that's a real quality opponent. I don't know if CU's going to be able to hang into this one. 14.5-point underdog. And what do? They come out and wipe the floor with the Knights and show just how good this team can be. So looking forward to that. But real quick, we've got an announcement to make.
Ooh,
we have ourselves a sponsor that we would like to tell you about. It's our friends over at Peckish. If you're up in Boulder, if you're a CU student, you probably know where Peckish is, right up there on the hill. Fantastic chicken wings, fantastic pizza. They just opened a brand new location in the Denver Tech Center right off of Bellevue with all those nice new apartment buildings and whatnot. But super excited to welcome Peckish to the Sko Show. We're going to be doing, I think, one of our shows live on location each month. So if you're a CU fan in and around the Denver metro area, make sure to come on down to Peckish. You can check them out online at peckishco.com. And Chase, you and I have been there a handful of times. One, great place to watch the game, but it's not just a great place to watch the game. The food, I think, might be better than the views.
The food is incredible, whether you're getting wings or pizza. They have one of the best pizza ovens, I think, in the South Metro area, brick oven pizza, but they're known for their wings. They're known for their wings on the hill. I think this might be the CU watch party spot of the South Metro Denver area.
It just might be. And I'm a big chicken wing fan. They've got a massive screen that's probably like, I don't know, like 20 plus feet long, 25 plus feet
like
long.
A combination of 8 50-inch TVs.
Yeah, that's exactly the best way to put it. CU memorabilia all over the place. Be sure to check out our friends over at peckishco.com. The wings are phenomenal. I'm a big fan of the barbecue chicken pizza. And like I said, Sko Show, Peckish, we're going to make it happen. So looking forward to growing with our friends over at Peckish and doing some shows there as well. And for any of you that want to get updated on the game, maybe want to relive the moment against UCF, make sure to check out the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. We have a full game recap available up there as well. But why don't we fast forward here a little bit, my friend? We talked about the big win against UCF, now the bye week. Before we get to the Kansas State game, what's kind of your overall gauge of this season for the Buffs right now?
The ceiling is the roof, as the great Michael Jordan once said. I think that this team has the ability, they have the talent. We have already seen it on the football field, to be able to make a push in the Big 12. I think what we know about the Big 12 right now, there are no elite teams in the conference. There are some good teams. There might be some teams that are close to great, but it seems like this is a conference where you could still lose 3 games in the conference and possibly be playing for the Big 12 championship. So CU's off to a 2-0 start. They're one of 3 teams that are off to a 2-0 start in the Big 12. I think you got to give them a chance at finishing at the top of the Big 12.
No, I would completely agree with you. And looking at the standings right now, BYU's the only team with an undefeated record. They're 2-0 in conference play, but BYU's 5-0. Colorado, as we mentioned, 4-1. Texas Tech's at 4-1. Iowa State at 4-0, right? But who do you think right now, we'll see with Kansas State obviously coming up next week, who do you think the best team in the Big 12 is from a football perspective?
That's tough to say, and that's one reason why this conference, anything can happen in this conference. I think Kansas State has looked really good besides that one game against BYU. I don't know how much I trust BYU right now, but obviously they're playing great football, and I think you got to throw Iowa State in there as well. So I'd put those 3 teams, but really anybody can win this conference.
Well, and to your point about how anybody can win this conference, right? We talked about how entering the game last week, UCF heading into the season was considered to be, a top 3 team, I would say, in the Big 12. Another team that's historically been, in recent memory, at least dominant in the Big 12 is Oklahoma State. And they're already at 3-2. And so it's like, we don't really know, like everything's still kind of fluid in regards to how this development of the conference is going to go this year. Obviously no Texas, no Oklahoma. That opens things wide. That makes things wide open here for CU and these other teams in the conference. But I think Coach Prime said this, like, just win, baby. Just win. As long as you keep winning, you can, you don't know where this thing's going to go.
Yeah, just win. We can't forget about Utah. I think that might be the most difficult game left on CU's schedule. Obviously, yes. Utah always gives them a lot of trouble. Utah still a good football team despite their loss against Arizona. So I'd put those probably 4 or 5 teams as the elite teams in the Big 12.
Yeah, no, it's going to be exciting though. And it just feels like I'm such a momentum guy that my whole thing is when you can establish that momentum, it feels a bit infectious. Like I'm a New York Met fan, and it's like they got into a big hot streak in the second half of the season. They're looking good in the playoffs right now. I think momentum is the one factor that, regardless of the level of talent that you have on offense or defense or coaching, whatever it might be, it's infectious. And I think the fact that Colorado was able to waltz in there and manhandle UCF, I mean, I'm assuming it was a great, like, think about the difference in how you feel after the Baylor game versus the UCF game. Like the Baylor one's a little bit like that SpongeBob meme, right? Like, whew, like we got out of that one versus, the UCF game. Like you're feeling good, man. You're eating steak for dinner after that.
This team is built on swagger. When you have Coach Prime as your head coach, you have to be built on swagger. And the one thing that makes your swag grow is some confidence. And beating a team like UCF the way that they did has to give this team a lot of confidence heading into the bye. And you know that Coach Prime and the rest of the coaching staff isn't going to let them get complacent throughout this bye week and into Kansas State. So as long as they can steady the course, keep getting better each day, I think you have to feel pretty good.
Just open up ESPN, and the first thing under the Colorado Buffaloes page is Paul Feinbaum admits Stephen A might be right about Dion being coach of the year.
Feinbaum wants to join the train. Do we let him on the train?
No. You see what Shedeur said after the game last week, talking about how, I just remember I was an HBCU kid who couldn't do it at the Power 5 level. That's the exact energy. These guys want to chirp, 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 chirp. They're on their high horse. I can't tell you how many people have doubted CU. I was skeptical. I'm going to be fair. I'll call it like I see it. But I always believe that if there's anyone that can pull this off, if there's anyone that can do this, it's Coach Prime, it's Shedeur, and it's the best darn player in college football, and Travis Hunter.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a fascinating rest of the season for the Colorado Buffaloes. And to help us talk about maybe just how good this Buffs team can be down the stretch, let's bring in our friend Adam Munsterteiger. You know him as the CU Buffaloes aficionado, encyclopedia of Buffs knowledge, on the beat, covering everything about the Buffs. And he's kind enough to give us a few minutes of his time. Of course, Adam from 24/7 Sports. You can follow him on social as well. And Adam, my friend, why don't we start with the game against UCF? Chase and I were talking about it, 14.5-point underdogs. I thought Colorado would be able to compete, but how about them waltzing into Florida and upsetting UCF as 2-touchdown underdogs? That's the biggest win of the Coach Prime era, in my opinion, my friend.
Yeah, I think the other game you would debate is TCU, but as last season played out, TCU didn't really end up being what people expected them to be. I still, even after what happened last Saturday, I think UCF is a pretty good football team. I really do. And I think they're going to win quite a few games down the stretch. And so to go out there and not just win on the scoreboard, but dominate in pretty much every phase of the game. And there's a lot of games that you do the rewatch and you make, the positives, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Rewatching that game, it felt like anything that wasn't in the good category was simply nitpicking this football team. And that was one of, the few games I've rewatched, and this is not a Coach Prime era thing. This is going very far back covering Colorado, that you just didn't really have a whole lot to complain about. Even special teams stepped up after a really rough performance the week prior. So it was a redemption game for certain squads, and it was other players like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders doing what they do on a regular basis.
What were you most impressed about? I know you said there was a lot of good, but what has been the biggest surprise, especially in that UCF game?
I thought just Pat Shurmur's creativity offensively with some of the things they did. And we've heard UCF's defensive coordinator come out and say, look, we weren't prepared for a lot of what they did. Now, I would say that you probably should be a little bit more prepared for 11 personnel as a Power 4 conference team, because you're going to face that. So it's kind of shocking to hear UCF's defensive coordinator say that they couldn't adjust to that during the game. But I think part of it was it wasn't a consistent, 11 personnel look or 10 personnel look. It was very much mixed up. And the challenge with that is getting everybody on the same page. There's been coaches at Colorado that have tried to reinvent the wheel each week depending on the opponent. Well, if not all 11 guys offensively are on the same page, then it doesn't matter how creative you are with kind of creating this game plan that matches up with the defense. Well, Pat Shurmur did an excellent job of putting some wrinkles in there and also having the players out there ready to execute it. And I thought offensively, really since the second half of that Baylor game, we've seen the continuity with that group start to come together. Fewer drops, a little bit fewer penalties on the offensive line, a little bit more consistent effort out of those guys. And, and when that happens, we know what Shedeur can do. And it's been incredible to see him, really take the stage and somehow get overshadowed by his own teammate.
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible, man. We're talking with Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, kind enough to give us a few minutes of his time during this bye week. Kind of in that same vein, what's different about this CU team right now than the CU team we saw against Nebraska? Because to me, it's a night and day difference across the board in regards to how the team's playing right now.
Well, they're running the football. That's where you got to start. And we've also seen on the other side of the ball, instead of Colorado's defense showing up in the second half of games, now they're coming out the gates playing hard, like we saw in the second half of that Nebraska game late against North Dakota State. And so those are the two main things. And I do think you start to see a little bit more improvement out of that offensive line and only giving up 2 sacks against UCF, you're going to take that every game the rest of the way if that's what this group can provide for you. So I think those are the main three things that stand out. And then I think in that UCF game, the fourth thing was something that we haven't seen, the special teams being very consistent. And pretty much every phase of special teams was great. Even the coverage units were solid with a new kickoff specialist out there who, Stojanovic is going to be a good player, but he's a walk-on freshman. And so he's stepped up to the challenge. He can't quite kick it through the end zone at this point. I think as he gets a little bit more mature in college and gets in the weight room, he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to consistently do that. For now, what he needs to do is kind of get some loft under that thing, drop it inside the 10 and let the coverage units go. And so I guess those are the 4 things that really stood out to me about things that have improved. And if that continues, then all of a sudden Colorado looks like maybe the best team in the Big 12.
You talked about running the football there. What they were able to do last Saturday was utilize a running back by committee. You saw Dallin Hayden, Isaiah Gustave, obviously Michael Welch as well, the true freshman. What do you think they should be doing at running back? Do you like the committee, or do you think that they need to focus on one of them?
I like the committee based on what we've seen from those guys in the last few weeks, especially with Charlie Offerdahl now being the guy that you want to reward when you're up on the scoreboard. And that game out in Orlando last Saturday ended with Charlie Offerdahl running for a first down. So that it was just a great, contributions from those guys. Now we'll see with Michael Welch. He came up hobbled in that game, and it sounds like it's a hamstring injury. So we'll see if he's back in the mix soon. I think that I've seen the debate out there that is clamoring for Isaiah Gustave to demand the bulk of the carries. And I think from a running standpoint, that is a very fair opinion to have, because I do think he looks like the best overall running back from a rushing standpoint. But he put the one on the ground against CSU. We know that he's done that in practice a few times as well. And there's the pass protection aspect of it as well. He whiffed on a couple of those in the Baylor game. So this is a situation where you can't just put Isaiah Gustave out there for 20 carries, because if you're not asking him to do the pass protection and be a really well-rounded running back, then it tips off the other defense when he's in the game if you're just running them all the time. So I still think, especially if Michael Welch is out, you need to have a healthy diet of Dallin Hayden running the ball as well. And that touchdown he scored, it was great blocking. We could have all gotten through that hole, but the acceleration he showed getting into the end zone, I think, shows why he's a guy that also needs to be part of the mix. So if Isaiah Gustave gets to the point in his career where you can really trust him to be excellent in pass protection and not ever put the ball on the ground, then all of a sudden I think you're looking at maybe a 1,000-yard back at Colorado. But right now, as things stand, I like the committee. I will say, though, when I see a back hot on one drive and then they come out the next offensive possession and have a different back out there, I don't like that. I do think you need to ride the hot hand a little bit more than they are. But, especially coming off that UCF game, I can't fault Coach Flea and his rotation of what he's put out there.
Yeah, no, it has been exciting to say the least. I mean, I know I've talked with you about it. I've talked with Chase about it. Danny Bailey, run the ball, because it's going to take a lot of pressure off of Shedeur Sanders and help get these wide receivers a little bit more open. We're chatting with Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com. He's an aficionado of all things Colorado Buffaloes. And real quick, you guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Peckish. 2 locations in Colorado, including their brand new location in the Denver Tech Center. They're up there on the hill in Boulder. So if you're looking to get some grub before or after the game, be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish. Incredible bone-in and boneless wings. They're about to build their new pizza oven at the one up in Boulder. They've got the pizza oven at the one down here in the Denver Tech Center. And Adam was actually telling me that he has not been to Peckish. So we're going to have to make sure and take care of him on that front. I believe, Chase, real quick, that's where Shedeur Sanders and company went after one of their most recent wins, I want to say.
It's their favorite wing spot. Why would they not be going there after a win?
And I know it'll be your favorite wing spot too. Be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish online at peckishco.com. You can also check them out on social media. I can't endorse it enough, guys. The wings are phenomenal. The barbecue chicken pizza is delicious. Great drink specials. And at least at the one down here in Bellevue, a fantastic place to watch the game. So be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish. But all right, we've got our guy Adam Munsterteiger on the line here talking a little Colorado Buffaloes football. Let's fast forward here real quick. On the bye week, but a tough matchup. Old pal Dylan Edwards coming back to Boulder with Kansas State and the Wildcats. One, how do you see this game playing out? What do you kind of forecast this Kansas State team as? And the second part of that question is, if CU can win the game against Kansas State, do you think they become a ranked team?
If Colorado wins and beats Kansas State, they should definitely be a ranked team. I know there was a lot of controversy over the fact that they didn't get more votes this past week. I'll be honest, I'm not an AP voter, and those guys, from what I've experienced, they take it really seriously. I know Brian Howell, who votes in that, has a whole spreadsheet, and it's not an emotional thing. It's very analytic, and you've got to kind of base it on what is it, 130 FBS teams at this point. You can't just base it on your bias over one team. So, and the other thing is, I don't understand getting up in arms after 5 weeks about a ranking, because they were ranked last year in 5 weeks in, and it doesn't matter where you're ranking at this point, I guess is my point there. But if they beat Kansas State, which is a very well-coached team, Kleiman was one of those guys that really helped NDSU and all that, history that we talked about in the season opener. Kleiman coached the Bison to 4 FCS national championships in 5 years. So we've seen Kansas State is a solid team in the trenches. They're going to run the football. Giddens is arguably, with Ollie Gordon not having a great start this season, the best running back in the conference. Yeah, Dylan Edwards provides a nice change of pace. He had a big punt return for a score in one of their wins earlier this season. But we also saw what BYU did to them. So this is not a juggernaut that is coming to Boulder. It is a beatable football team, just like every team left on the schedule. You put Utah in there, especially with the Cam Rising situation up in the air and what we saw Arizona do to them last week. So it's been riveting football through 5 weeks for Colorado, and that's going to continue after the bye week, the next 7 weeks, because there is not a lot separating some of these teams. And I think if Kansas State and Colorado met on a neutral field, you're talking about maybe them splitting 10 games. That's really how I think of these teams matching up. I think Colorado, if this continuity that they showed against UCF continues, then all of a sudden they look like the best team in the conference just altogether. But it's too premature to do that off just one 60-minute football game. So I expect it to be a very competitive, riveting game. And if you're a Colorado fan, hopefully you don't need to Hail Mary at the end to win it.
You know me, Adam. I like to discuss the things that they're discussing on the message boards. And one of the big topics of conversation this week is the red shirts of Trevor Woods and Jeremiah Brown that Coach Prime announced after the game this past weekend. What's your take on the red shirts? Is it something that can be mutually beneficial to both? Do you see these guys wanting to enter the transfer portal, or just kind of give us your opinion on what you think about Trevor Woods and Jeremiah Brown opting to utilize their red shirt for their senior season?
Well, first off, I understand the decision from Trevor Woods and Jeremiah Brown's standpoint. You got to put yourself in their shoes. They were backups at linebacker, and with Nakai Hill-Green playing the way he was, unless he or Vonta Bentley get injured, then there really isn't an opportunity for either of those two guys to start. I mean, Bentley and Hill-Green are playing at an all-conference level right now. So you've played 4 games, and I bet both those guys wish they could tell the future. If there was an injury situation and they'd have an opportunity for a big role in some meaningful games down the stretch, I don't think they would make this decision. But as things stand right now, Vonta Bentley and Hill-Green are your guys. And so in the NIL era, if you're Trevor Woods and you're going, okay, I'm not getting drafted in next April's draft, and Jeremiah Brown the same, you kind of want to maximize your college eligibility from a monetary standpoint, and you don't want to quit on your team. But again, it's not like you were starting. It's not like the UNLV quarterback situation where he was their starting quarterback and and quit on the team over NIL. This is a situation where they can both come back, whether it's at Colorado in 2025 or another school, and say, what's my NIL, market here? And so that makes a whole lot of sense. If they do stay at Colorado, I would imagine both will be in the mix for a starting job, but I don't think you would just hand the starting job to Trevor Woods and Jeremiah Brown at linebacker next year. I think you'd have to go in the portal. Hill Green does have another year of eligibility, but the way he's playing right now, that looks like a guy that would be off to the NFL because he is a fourth-year guy in college. So kind of a long-winded answer to say that if Bentley and Hill Green don't get hurt, I don't think it negatively affects his team too bad. We saw Jalen Wester come in at linebacker and play well late in that UCF game. So there's maybe a little bit more depth than we thought going into that game. So I understand it. If you're a Colorado fan, I think you'd love to have both those guys back in the program, but not necessarily being guaranteed a starting spot.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the season shakes out and, just the overall roster complexion. I mean, we got I don't even want to talk about the offseason right now, but we don't know what this CU team may or may not look like next season. But one more for you before we cut you loose. Of course, he is Adam Munsterteiger, publisher of BuffStampede.com. Kind of an open-ended one. What's this team's ceiling? Are we talking about a team that can contend for the Big 12 championship? Naturally, if they were able to win the Big 12 championship, that means a spot in the CFP. I mean, they're 4-1. This game that they played against UCF was their most dominant game of the season, snuck by Baylor, pretty good win against CSU, snuck by NDSU a little bit, and of course that awful loss to Nebraska. But Adam Munsterteiger, what do you think the ceiling for this Colorado Buffaloes team is this season?
Well, first off, you got to look around the Big 12. And when you do that, you come back to the conclusion that, yes, Colorado is absolutely a contender for the Big 12 championship. In fact, ESPN's FPI, which I don't put a whole lot of stock into. They didn't give Colorado much of a chance to even go out to UCF and win that football game based on the FPI. But it is interesting to note that right now Colorado has the second FPI odds to win the Big 12 behind Iowa State. So at least the computers like what Colorado's done early this season. And you also look at just the trend of things. They're getting better. And it's not always – at times it's been 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? But it has been pretty continual progress, and especially with the special teams stepping up and having a much better performance against UCF, then you look at a team that doesn't have as many holes as when you're at halftime of that Nebraska game analyzing this football team, kind of shaking your head going, man, this team has way too much talent to be playing like this. Well, they have gelled a little bit, and now all of a sudden – that chemistry is coming together and they're playing like the talent they have on this team. And the depth has really shown itself as well. I was talking with Brian Howell after the game that, in past years when Deion Hayes is listed as being out on the edge, you think back to when Colorado had one really good pass rusher in Carson Wells, or even going back to an Abraham Wright. Well, if one of those guys went down, then all of a sudden Colorado's pass rusher is screwed. Well, what happens out at UCF is Deion Hayes isn't in there. Well, you have Tajay McCoy step up and have his first 2 sacks. Sam Okunlola, his first sack of the season. Arden Walker, a fantastic game in run support off the edge. And so that's where I'm most bullish on this team, is because you're going to get weeks 9, 10, 11, 12, and everybody's banged up. Colorado's going to be banged up. The teams they're playing are going to be banged up. And now we've seen Colorado's depth really show itself. And so that gives me the thought that Colorado's going to be a really strong, dangerous team in November. And that's when they have some of those tough games at home against Utah, playing Oklahoma State, which doesn't look quite as tough, going to Kansas, which now does not look quite as tough. And so you look across the conference and you look at what Colorado's doing, and I think they're as likely as anybody in this conference to win the championship.
Ooh, you heard it from Adam. You're making me believe, my man. I've been believing as well. That UCF game was absolutely fantastic. But, of course, Adam Munsterteiger, publisher of BuffStampede.com. Be sure to check him out on social media as well. But, Adam, thank you so much for a few minutes. We'll do it again next week, and hopefully we get a good game against Kansas State.
Sounds good. I can't wait to try out those peckish wings. I'm a big wing guy, and I don't know why I haven't got there yet. That's one of the few boulder spots that people talk about that I haven't gotten to. So I'm very anxious and excited they're on board with you guys as a sponsor.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll get you taken care of, and we'll talk to you next week. I'll get Danny Bailey that gift card in his hands to get to you, and hopefully we've got a fun football season to talk about, my man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir. I always love chatting with Adam, man. That dude is an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to the Colorado Buffaloes and their football team. Like I said to him at the end there, dude, I'm believing.
Do you believe?
Do I believe, Chase? I believe. You know how insane it would be? Could you imagine after last year, 4-8, the start, the haters, the noise, the doubters, if they figured out a way not only to win the Big 12 and then punch their ticket into the college football playoff, regardless if they get waxed against an Alabama or one of these teams in the college football playoff. But imagine Coach Prime and CU getting there in the first year of the 12-team playoff. The haters would melt.
My understanding of how the college football playoff works is the conference champions get the home game. If you don't get the bye, if you have to play in the first round, you're not in the top 4. Conference champions get the bye. So you're going to play an at-large team, and one of those at-large teams that it could possibly be is Oregon. Could you imagine Dan Lanning after what happened? Why am I getting chills just thinking about
goosebumps.
it? Dan Lanning, after what happened last year with all that talk, has to come into Boulder to play a college football playoff game.
Fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. That would be on repeat in the locker room if I was Coach Prime. Repeat. I also like, a lot of people think that Coach Prime and the Buffs are flamboyant. He came out after the game last week and talked about how they're always the underdog. They're always humble. They always got a chip on their shoulder. A lot, and I believe that. Last year, I felt was a little bit more theatrical. This year, I really think that it's the outside noise that is generating the conversation against Colorado more so than the players and the coaching staff themselves. I think they're going into this season and all these games with a bit of a blue-collar mentality, lunch pail and arm, and just trying to go and get the job done. So we'll see what happens against Kansas State. We'll save all those thoughts for next week's episode of the Sko Show. And real quick, I didn't mention this yet. This Friday, so that'll be, October the 4th? If you want to come on down to number 38, DJ McKinney and Cameron Silman Craig will be down doing a meet and greet party at number 38. I'll be down there. We'll do some interviews, have some good social coverage. But at number 38, come on down on Friday, DJ McKinney and Cameron Silman Craig. But
two of the unsung heroes of the season, two of the unsung heroes on the defense. Cam Silman Craig might not even be unsung right now. He is playing legitimate football. He's probably playing his way onto an NFL roster.
It's like Fred Warner Jr.
He is a dog.
He is a dog, dude.
But DJ McKinney also playing great football opposite of Travis Hunter at that corner spot. But that's just one of the things that I love about this team is you can point to so many different positions right now of guys that are playing great football. And as Adam mentioned, this team has some depth. Deion Hayes didn't play this past weekend, one of their best edge rushers. They picked it right up. Chidozie Nwankwo didn't play for 2 weeks. The rest of the defensive line picked it right up. They got depth at the D-line. They got depth at the edge. They're losing some depth at linebacker if these two end up redshirting. But you got a lot of depth in the secondary now with different guys that we've seen, especially with Shiloh coming back next week. They've rotated this offensive line a ton. So at least there's guys that you can trust to be on the field that have experience. If somebody goes down on that offensive line, obviously the wide receivers have depth. We talked about the 3 running backs that they're utilizing right now. It seems like pretty much every position group right now, it can go 2-3 deep on guys that you can trust to be out on the field. And that's just got to make you feel better about how this team's going to finish at the end of the year.
7 games left. They play the 20th ranked Kansas State Wildcats next week at home. Then they go to Arizona to play. Are they also the Wildcats?
Yeah,
right. Wow.
That's right.
So Wildcats.
That's just confused your brain.
Yeah, I was like, wait, I'm pretty sure they're the Wildcats. So back-to-back games against the Cats. They'll play at home against Cincinnati, at Texas Tech.
Wait, Cincinnati, what's their mascot?
Bearcats. So,
right? So 3 games in a row against the Cats.
Here we go, baby. And then, to finish the year, their last 4 games at Texas Tech, home against Utah, at Kansas, at home against Oklahoma State. So it's going to be an exciting time. And I am excited to broadcast some of our shows at Peckish. I'm excited to keep doing this show, let the good times roll, maybe include some post-game reaction shows after these games. And real quick to the YouTube community, man, the video we did on Sunday after the game, incredible numbers, incredible engagement, and that's because of you. Yes, we're the host, but you, the fans out there, are the ones that drive the show. So drop some comments. Make sure to subscribe. That way you guys never, ever miss an episode of the Sko Show. We've got Pickaxe and Roll with my guy, Ryan Blackburn. We've got the Broncos podcast with Troy Rank. We've got Mile High Sports Today with Nate Lundy and Sean Drotar. So make sure to subscribe.
Ringside, Arif Dean?
Ringside with Arif Dean. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I think a fan favorite from the Avalanche is going to be appearing on that show sooner rather than later. So it is going to be good. But Chase, before we get out of here, my friend, any closing thoughts?
I'm just excited to get past this bye week. I can't wait to watch this football team again, and that is a great feeling.
Yep, I completely agree. I'm looking for them to get rested and recovered. I'm looking for them not to get too high after that win against UCF, and I'm looking for them to go into this game against Kansas State with the exact same mentality that they had against UCF. I think if they can do that, they're going to have a chance to win this game, be a ranked opponent, and then essentially control their own destiny. So thanks to Adam Munsterteiger. Thanks to our friends over at Peckish. Make sure to check them out in Boulder and down here in the Denver Tech Center. You can follow me at social media at Media by AP. He's at Chase Howell _, and Danny Bailey, who you guys unfortunately are not able to see with the luscious locks back there. He's on social media at dbailey5280. But that's going to do it for us right here on the Sko Show, folks. Make sure to comment, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Follow us on social. Let us know what you think. What is the ceiling for this Colorado Buffaloes team? And we'll talk to you guys next week for a preview show between Colorado and Kansas State. Enjoy the bye week, folks. And Sko Buffs.
Let's go Buffs.
Sko Buffs.